first step, and we're going to solve by completing the square. So the first step is to divide, if your leading term has a coefficient in front, we're going to divide it out. So we're going to divide this 3 to get x squared minus 4x plus 2/3 equals 0. Then our second step was to subtract over c, which is 2/3. So then we get x squared minus 4x, and then I just personally leave that space, remember, when I subtract my constants over, to leave space for that term that's going to get added onto both sides. You don't have to do that, I just do that. Okay, so now we're on the third step. We're going to go ahead and take b, which is -4 in our case, divided by 2 and square it, and that's what's going to go in these two spots. So our b is -4, and divide that by 2, square it, so we get -2 squared, so we get 4. And that's what's going to get added onto both sides. So we put a 4 here and a 4 there. I'll put a 1 here because we need an LCD here, right, which is a 3. And over here, this will always factor nicely as a nice binomial. It's always going to be x, and what's going to be here is always the second part after you simplify your b, which is this. This is always going to go here. So you don't even have to think about it. This will factor like that. It's going to be x, and what's going to go here is when you divide your b by 2, that's what's going to go there. I'm talking too much. So here the LCD is 3, so this is going to become a 12. So then you're going to get 12 minus 2, which is 10. So then you get 10/3 over here. Now it's looking like the extraction of roots type. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. So then we come up here and we get x minus 2 equals the square root of 10/3. There's nothing that could pop out of that. So, but it's plus or minus, right? When I take the square root, you guys almost got me. So then if we got x minus 2 is equal to the positive version of that, and then we got x minus 2 is equal to the negative of that. My throat's killing me. So if we just add the 2 onto both sides for both of these, we get our solution. So we get x is equal to that 10^3, and x is equal to that negative square root of 10/3. That's what I meant to say. Then we're just going to add the 2 over. Okay? So that is it for this one. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and try this, and then I'll go over it with you. Okay, so we see a leading coefficient. We see a coefficient in front of our leading term, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. We say we're going to divide that out. So divide this by 1/2, divide this by 1/2, divide this by 1/2, and the 0 by 1/2. So when you divide by a fraction, it flips, right? So really what we could have done was taken this whole equation and multiplied it by 2. That would have been the same thing, right? Right, because this will flip, and that'll be like 2/1, and then these will cancel. So I'm really doing the same thing, but I'm just going to go ahead and multiply this whole thing by 2, which we just saw is the same thing. That'll get rid of our leading coefficient. So then we'll get x squared minus 4x minus 40 equals 0. You just want to move the c. You want to get the numbers on one side and the variables on one side. So I'm going to add the 40 over. Minus 4x I always leave a space. Okay, now we're gonna go to the third step. Take b, which is -4 in our case. We're gonna divide that by 2 and we're gonna square it. So then you'll get -2 squared, which is 4. That's what we're gonna add on to both sides. I already put the plus there. Okay. You just put the variable x here, and this always factors like this, right? And what's gonna go here is whatever you have after you divide your b by 2, which is -2. That'll be a -2 here. And then that'll be 44. Extraction of roots looking type. So we square root the both sides. And then now we get that x minus 2 is equal to positive something, and x minus 2 is equal to negative something, because accounting for the roots. And those somethings are the square root of 44, which could be rewritten as 4 times 11, because you gotta pop the perfect, you gotta pop the perfects out. So you get x minus 2 is equal to that's gonna come out as a 2, right? As a 2 rad 11, and then you get x minus 2 is equal to a -2 rad 11. And if we were to add the 2 over, we'd get our solutions at this point. So then our solutions are that x is equal to 2 rad 11, x is equal to -2 rad 11, and we're just going to add the 2 onto both sides. So that's it for that one. Alright, so here's another example. Solve it by completing the square. The first step is to look out for the coefficient in front of the leading term, which is a -1. On a quadratic equation, you really never want your leading coefficient to be negative, just in general. So I'm going to go ahead and divide that out, which was our first step. So divide by, that's a -1. So then we get x squared minus a 4x equals 0. Our second step was to get the numbers and variables on one side. So here, that's already done for us. Here's the 0 is a number, it's already on that side. So now we're going to move on to the third step. Take b, divide it by 2, square it, and add it onto both sides. It sounds like a broken record. So our b is -4. We're going to divide it by 2, and then we're going to square it. That's what's going to get added onto both sides. So then we get -2 squared, which is 4. That's the candidate. So we get x squared minus 4x plus the 4, and this guy gets plus the 4. Alrighty, now this is going to factor in a nicely manner. It's going to be x squared equals, what's going to go here is always what you get after you divide your b by 2. So after I divided my b by 2, I got -2. So that's what's going to go here. And then that's just the 4. Okay. Square root property, extraction of root type looking equation. So we take the square root of both sides. So then we get x minus 2 is equal to, x minus 2 is equal to. One of them is going to be negative because of the plus or minus from the radical. And the square root of 4 is 2. So then we get a 2 and a 2. Now if we added the 2 over, we get our solution. So we get x is equal to, x is equal to. There's a 2 and a -2 already here. And I'm going to add these 2's over. So plus 2, plus 2. Okay. I don't know why I thought it was going to be done. So x equals 4 and x equals 0. So that's it for this one. Alright, so I just wanted to recap that last equation we solved. We did it by completing the square. I just wanted to point out, with these quadratic equations, there's many ways to solve them. You could go about factoring, graphing, those kind of go hand to hand. You got the quadratic formula, and you got completing the square. So, when you look at it, you want to kind of strategize and see which approach is best in taking in doing that. So we solved this by completing the square, but it would have been much better if we did it by factoring. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. If I want, I could factor out a negative or positive x, doesn't matter. Then we get x minus 4 equals 0, 0 factor property. Set this to 0, or set that to 0. You already know this is going to be 0. And then over here, we get a 4 out. So those are the same solutions. We got x equals 0 and x equals 4 when we did it by completing the square. But that took us a awfully long time. So, when you're looking at these quadratics, when you notice something's a quadratic equation, just take a second to see what way would be best to go about approaching it. And it all comes with practice, So that was it for completing the square, and I hope to see you next time.